Okay, so it's 3:30 here in the UK, so we'll get started. My name's Martin Gill, and a very warm welcome to our 19th Security Thought Leadership webinar. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we've been with you, where we've been debating a topic every week that requires some sort of thinking. And the idea behind thought leadership is that the quality of security we get in the future will depend in some part on our ability to learn from what's going on now. And so each week I invite panelists from around the world to discuss the topic. And this week we've got 4 individuals who've got very different experiences from very different countries. In a second, I will invite each of them to introduce themselves. And once they've done that, I will then ask each of them to make an opening statement. While they do that, you might want to think of questions, and to do that I ask you to use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. So not the chat button, the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and I will endeavour to incorporate your question. Those of you who've been with us before, you will know it's fast moving, so you've got to get your question in early, and I'll try my best to make sure that we get through everything in the 45 minutes available. So let's go to our panel. I'm going to ask each of them in turn just to say who they are and a little bit about them. So first of all, Sean.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Davis, and I'm the Global Director for Compliance and Sustainability at the Royal Mail Group.
And from the United Kingdom, let's go to the United States and Bonnie. Bonnie.
Hello, welcome. I'm Bonnie Michaelman. I'm the Executive Director of Police, Security, and Outside Services for Partners Healthcare, which is 17 hospitals in the New England area of the United States, and a past president of ASIS, IAHS, and ISMA.
Thank you very much indeed, Bonnie. And from the United States over to Canada, and Paul.
Good morning from Vancouver to everyone. My name's Paul Stanley. I'm the Chief Security Officer for the province of British Columbia.
Thank you very much indeed. Until a few seconds ago, we also had Mohammed Ahmed from Kenya, but he's got connection problems. Not from Kenya, actually, from the United States. So, are you there? Are you there, Hamid? Mohammed, are you there?
But, yeah.
Okay.
Mohammed. Yes. Martin, can I introduce myself now?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
From Kenya, I'm the Kenya chapter chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mohammed. So let's go to each of our panelists and ask them for their opening statements. So to Sean, to you first, please.
Thank you. I think when I think about, well, there's one point I'd like to just open with, and that is how great opportunities like this are to still keep the dialogue going, to still stay connected, to still share experiences and ideas with other people, and to be able to talk about the things that we've done and stay connected in what is a really challenging time. I think with my role, which is sustainability, I think the sustainability piece around keeping your people safe and secure, your organisation safe and secure, I think it's incredibly important for all of us. But I think the sustainability message for me is a key one. And I also think we've learned, and we are continuing to learn through this crisis, the importance of business preparedness, business continuity planning, and also thinking about the things that we're learning now and how we can use those to better equip us for the future. Because certainly we've done exercises and we've done drills and we've had a number of test exercises, but when you get a global pandemic, as we've seen with this, and all the business is under challenge and under scrutiny right across all the functions, and you're an organisation like ours that works, you know, the length and breadth of the United Kingdom and also into other parts of the world, keeping the security message strong, keeping people connected, making having information that we can work with, and learning from the experiences we've got to better equip us now and in the future has been incredibly important. And I think looking out for things that we didn't know that we didn't know. So we do the scenario planning, we do the exercises, but this whole exercise has been really helpful in highlighting, certainly for me, the areas that are blind spots, our weak spots, and to then use feed into our business continuity plans, our our security SWOT analysis and threat assessments to make sure that we are using that information to strengthen us in the future.
Sean, thank you very much indeed. I'll go from you then to Bonnie. Bonnie, your opening statement, please.
I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about this disaster from the perspective of our largest hospital, which has 30,000 employees. I've been through a lot of other disasters. I was president of ASIS International during 9/11. I have been through shootings. I have been through the Boston Marathon bombing disaster and other things. But this has taken a different turn because of the longitudinal nature of it. For 9 or 10 weeks, we have been in lockdown. We have had hundreds and hundreds of critically ill patients, hundreds of critically ill staff from the pandemic, supply shortages, cyber issues, fraud issues, many scams, extremists, because we have so much research that have come out of the woodwork to attack us in various new ways. A lot of violence because people are obviously very confused and upset and frustrated and not dealing with life as well as they once did. We've learned a lot of lessons so far. Certainly command and control and a unity of command is critical, particularly in a long and severe disaster like this one, and getting different guidance and regulation from the federal government, from the states, from the city, from your own organization can have a catastrophic effect on you being able to make immediate and quick and sustainable changes if those entities are not speaking together. Having a layered approach, having a good incident command system, creating the right infrastructure so that you can sustain operations the way you need to, and that you can continue to keep morale high. I have 400 people that work for me here at Mass General alone, and they have had very difficult jobs in keeping their morale high when they've got personal issues to deal with this pandemic, and yet have had to work so hard and so long. Keeping people agile and flexible and being able to switch gears quickly, functionally take on new challenges and new jobs, and obviously balancing that with their own needs. We've had issues around 12,000 employees, for example, that couldn't get to work because the public transportation systems haven't been working. So trying to figure out how to do that in order to keep the hospitals sustaining operations. Dealing with blood shortages, dealing with a huge numbers of wonderful people who wanted to make donations, but having those donations come in unfiltered ways can be problematic at best. And really trying to ensure that we are constantly giving the support we need for staff, the access and the support we need for patients. We've had to restrict all visitors. Well, try restricting visitors to patients who need them, who may be losing their battle with life at the end of their life, not having their families with them. It's a cascading and devastating effect. So dealing with all of that and creating resilience in new ways has been quite a challenge and quite a learning experience.
Bonnie, thank you very much indeed. So I'll go from Bonnie in the United States to Paul in Canada. Paul, over to you. Your opening statement, please.
Thanks, Martin. And in tradition with the government in British Columbia, what I'd like to do is I'd like to mention the fact that we all live on the territory of the Coast Salish people, and that we thank them for allowing to use our lands, their lands in peace and friendship. So that's a customary thing that we do at more or less every meeting that we go to. Our Lieutenant Governor will actually then speak in a Coast Salish language and give greetings that way, but I'm not that fluent, so that's all I'm going to do there. In terms of the opening statement, what I'd like to do is I'd like to emphasize the fact that we have, like Bonnie, and in the same way that Sean has mentioned, we've been experiencing all kinds of disorders in the last little while, not just pandemic related, but also a lot of issues around public protests, civil disobedience, not in the same extent that many nations suffer, but nevertheless, things that are not familiar to us and we are not used to dealing with. And I think what we've done is we've seen a real upturn in public voice, where people are not afraid to come out and voice their disagreement. Now, whether it's a indigenous issue, whether it's something to do with the government of the day, or whether indeed it's something more sinister, the people are coming out and they're making their point very clear. And so one of the things that's been coming to mind from the government's perspective is making sure that we maintain that continuity of government, not because we want to oversee and be draconian in our measures to people, but in fact to provide a suitable environment for the population to live in. That's the whole infrastructure, everything to do with critical movement of produce, of the transit, the ability to come to work, all of those other elements, they fall to the government to make the plans. Now, the one thing that Sean made very clear was the fact that we need to make sure that we are, excuse me, more robust going forward, should we have a recurrence of this. And I think it's very, very interesting that we would be very foolish if we do not, as a society, now make extreme relationships with our stakeholders and to enforce the ability to hold continuity, not just of government, but also of society in general, because this is going to happen again. And that's me for the moment.
Paul, thank you very much indeed. I'll now go to Mohammed Ahmed. Your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much, Martin. I want to state that coming from Kenya in Africa, we have felt more like the biggest impact of this pandemic in the area of security, business, and economic disruption. Imagine for me now, I'm talking from the US. Yeah, I'm talking from the US, and I didn't want to be here. I was in Nairobi. I came on visit here, and I found a lockdown here. The airport was closed in Nairobi while I'm here. I can't go back now, and I'm waiting to see what's going to happen. Now, I manage a very big, the Kenyan chapter of SIS. I've got almost 700,000 men, guards under my group, and almost 100,000 companies. All that have gone through disruption. We have seen people laid off. We have seen business entirely laying off the entire staff. We have seen companies readjusting. We have seen new norms, transport systems, all affected. And there have been major impacts really overall in most of our companies. The biggest lesson for all of us is the element of business continuity and the central place of security in business in Kenya. Most companies maybe have not prepared well for this. They have not foreseen this, and has had a major impact on them. And I want to say also, Martin, the issue of certification is now we are knowing the importance of having well-qualified, trained, and certified security officers. Their importance, their role, their impact is being felt now across all domains. That's my starting point, Martin.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, let's get to the questions. And can I ask you please to make sure you use the question and answer button at the bottom of the screen. Just can I ask the panelists, when you're not speaking, if you could just mute so we don't get some feedback, today. I'm going to come to you first, Sean. One of the points that you made is that this was a great opportunity for the securities, for the sector to learn things. I think one of the things, Sean, that people may not know is that you've got a background in health and safety. And one of the things that you've been doing is looking at what security can learn from health and safety. In a context where we're dealing with a virus, learning from health and safety seems a wholly good thing to think about. So what can we learn from the world and health and safety, if anything, for security?
I think there's a lot of similarities. As you know, we've had conversations about this on a number of occasions now. I think there's a lot of overlap between the role of the health and safety professional and the security professional. And I think they're both technical specialisms. They both require a unique set of skills in terms of business partnering. They're both a support service, so they only survive for as long as there is a viable business there. So there's the skin in the game in terms of the function itself being contributing to the ongoing sustainability and viability of the business. But I also, I mean, my personal vision is for a multi-skilled, multidisciplined health, safety, and security team in the field that looks at loss prevention and risk management right across the piece. And I think, as I said, I think there's a lot that can be learned. I also think there's a lot that can be learned the other way. So I think the safety team can, the health and wellbeing and health and safety team can learn a lot from security in terms of threat assessment, in terms of risk management, horizon scanning, looking at potential risks sooner. And so I think that there's if my hypothesis is proven correct, and the trials and the models that I'm running within Royal Mail are correct, and I suspect there will be with what I'm seeing so far, I think a holistic, integrated, multidisciplined team will add so much more to the business and job enrichment for the people doing it.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll come to you on this issue, Paul. Just before we came on air, we were talking about teams, and this cropped up in a webinar the other day when there was some disagreement, and Sean's point that multi-skilling, taking on tasks from other areas, was seen by some, as Sean has said, as an opportunity, and others as a dilution of the security role, which will in the long run count against its position as a separate identity. Paul, your thoughts on that? Paul's talking on mute. Bonnie, I wonder if I could ask you that, and you're muted too, just to say whether the multi-skilling teams could be counted.
I think anyone who does not take every opportunity right now to broaden functionally, to enhance skill sets of their team, to interface more with other partners. We used to talk about convergence only from an IT and physical security perspective. Now we need to talk about convergence with all aspects of the organization. I think anyone who doesn't look at that is being very myopic and probably won't have a job soon. It doesn't, in my mind, mean that we contaminate our functions by enhancing them. And I think stepping up and showcasing to other people what we are made of and what we can do and what competencies we have helps everyone to elevate their knowledge of security and their ability to help us protect our assets and our environments.
Thank you, Bonnie. Paul, you were muted then. Can I come to you next, please?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, sorry, I had a problem with my microphone here. I think that, you know, to taking up Bonnie and Sean's point, the whole business of integrating security into a role when it fits a multitude of tasks is very important. Now, the old days of simply asking for someone with a uniform and a pulse are over. There's a lot of dissension around that because people are not happy with the product they get. And so we need to work hard to make sure the professionalism of the security industry is reflected in the services we offer to clients. Now, that's not an easy task. I know that people like Glenn Kitteringham have been forwarding this for many, many years. And I join that chorus now, saying that we need to work harder. We need to be more prepared. We need to be more adequately equipped, etc.
Thank you very much indeed. I mean, on that point, Mohammed, Claire Tankard adds that whether there's going to be a lot more opportunities. Now, you spoke about some of the problems that were occurring in terms of businesses going bust and some sectors being inactive. In other webinars, we've learned about events, for example, and football stadia, where it's going to be cut back. Do you see there's an opportunity here for security to branch out into surgeries, libraries, schools, as Claire suggested? Is that going to happen amongst your client base?
In fact, Martin, what's happening now is that we are seeing the importance of security within most of the companies and government institutions, whereby we are the only team now termed as part of essential services who are able to get to every area, every factory, every government office 24/7 and ensure continuity. And because of this then, even in hospitals, you find the security managers and men are the ones who are at the front there, checking the patients coming in, ensuring they are taken care of, you know, all the way to the wards and all that. And in certain companies also, you find that because of working from home, the security manager, the security guard have become responsible for everything else going actually physically at the site of where the job actually continues. What I see therefore is that security will play a major role across all departments in terms of guiding and ensuring there's continuity, even in areas that were not expected before. Hotels are closed, businesses are closed, transport is not there, there's a bit of insecurity along the roads and all that, a bit of backgrounds and all that. The only person who is available is that security manager, security guard. And therefore, what I see is a situation where we talk of somebody being jack of all trades and a master of none, and being available to help in every area.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me come to a question from Mark Rowe. I'll come to Bonnie first on this. And the question, Bonnie, is worst case scenario that comes to mind is if the internet goes down during the pandemic. Is that too bad a thing to even think of? Bonnie, how big's the threat and risk, and how prepared would security be for that?
Well, I think it's a different question if the internet goes down or if our systems go down. Because if our systems go down in our organizations, in our 17 hospitals, lives are on the line, because we use those systems to determine if people can live or die based on a lot of different factors. We have a lot of preparation way before this ever happened for that, and I think we're pretty well managed around that. But I think if the internet died, we would have a lot of issues around people needing to make modifications and changes. And again, it goes back to my question of my point about being flexible and having good relationships that are not established during a pandemic or a disaster, but have been established well in advance, so that you can use appropriate partners to help you get through whatever changes need to be made or whatever solutions need to be found.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, that point's cropped up a few times about the importance of relationships and making them meaningful. Paul, I'm going to ask you a question. You in your opening statement mentioned new threats and in particular that sort. This issue, system stroke internet going down, how well prepared, how big, obviously it's going to be a massively big deal, but how big a risk is it? And how well prepared would you be over there in British Columbia?
I think the risk is significant. I'm not sure whether or not we could, in the days of the robust nature of the internet, I'm not sure whether we would actually see a complete malfunction of the internet globally. Hopefully not. Please God, that would never happen. But in terms of the impact in, as Bonnie mentioned, the network and the ability to perform your critical functions within your organization, this is a constant requirement now. Our CIO is working at this all the time, because let me give you an example. As we have closed down forward-facing public outlets because of the risk of spreading the virus under the pandemic conditions, we have migrated to an online environment for our customers. And so we have to make sure that that is available. Otherwise, the frustration of not getting your social security check, of not getting your licenses for the various things you have to do, life still has to go on. And so we've had to reinforce our systems quite dramatically, actually, Martin, to allow that to happen, just in order to allow the public officials to work from home. We've had to elevate the network system quite substantially.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me come to Sean. Sean, I want to ask you a slight variation of the question from Mark. Is that you mentioned in your opening statement that you've been doing a lot of preparation in advance. How effective have your plans been? I mean, the point Bonnie raises is a good one. This is a different type of crisis. For a start, it's lasting much longer. To what extent have your plans that you worked on beforehand been fit for purpose?
That is a great question. And that is something that we are currently working through at the moment. So I'll answer it in two parts. The immediate response, standing things up, business continuity team, business assessment team, IT solution teams, keeping suppliers paid, people paid, etc., has been very good. Having it in place for a length of time and not getting fatigued by it and keeping it moving and keeping it fresh has been the challenge. And also other things that have come kind of left field. So part of your business continuity and your redeployment plan was that you could move from one place to another. If everything's in lockdown, then where is that other place? That's been a challenge, and we've worked around that, and we've come up with different solutions to it. But I think when we go back into the modelling, back into the assessment, we're going to be looking at this with a completely different set of eyes.
Okay, that's interesting. Bonnie, I'm going to ask you the same question because it's a really big one, isn't it? Given the preparation you made beforehand, how effective have your plans proven to be?
I think anyone who says that they can properly prepare for any emergency is lying to themselves. I think what we can do is prepare with principles that people can modify for each various discrete disaster, and this is no exception. I think having people aware of how to move and change when needed, having people understand what their roles may be during a disaster, having really trusted network and partnerships that people can rely on and modify resource deployment, among other things. Elevating the security team in advance. I personally, and I'm going to say this with all due respect, never, ever use the word in any of the worlds I speak in or live in, security guard. I think it's a pejorative term, and I think we have to get people to see our folks as security professionals, security officers, or best yet, security professionals, because that's when they really understand and will listen to the fact that we know what we're doing. We will be able to help create safety. I think going back to the principles we've been talking about as an industry lately of ESRM, enterprise security risk management, having that in place early, a good infrastructure that people understand that you've done as a security leader, a very, very good deep dive and approach to understanding your organization's macro risks helps a lot with disasters when they unfold.
Bonnie, thank you very much indeed. I come to you, Mohammed, and a question from Erica Gibbons. And she's talking about the situation in Africa, actually South Africa, and the desperate plight of people, health issues, unemployment, saying get people to school, but they're too worried about protecting themselves. All this leads to the potential for serious disorder, I suppose, but for discontent. How well prepared do you think the security sector is for that type of risk, that type of possibility?
Well, Matt, let me start by saying that for us, we were taken by surprise. Nobody expected what has happened and to happen and unfold the way it has, that you have a lockdown, you don't go to work, schools are closed, and everything is actually coming to a stop. And even before this came up, we were challenged in the area of security, in terms of residentials, in terms of major enterprises, in terms of moving around. All that was a problem. And having not foreseen this, and the fact that we have had to cut down in key areas of security has had a major impact overall on security. We have seen for the first time instances where you have individuals coming on the road, stopping vehicles and stealing from vehicles. We've seen instances where people come on bicycles and you're walking in your estate and pick a telephone from you. We've seen instances where they come and threaten you at home. Basically because, one, initially even before, there were very few jobs. Now there are much more less jobs. Initially before, there were not much available requirements. Now we have gone even much more down in terms of that. What else? 80% of the staff across departments are sitting at home. What does that mean? They have to find a way of surviving. And therefore, what has happened is we have seen more like our security companies coming much more handy now to even secure areas that before nobody imagined they were going to be secured. And therefore, I can say we've done what we can to ensure that we play above board and provide security across board in all domains, even beyond what was earlier envisaged. It was a big surprise for us, indeed, a very big surprise. But the good thing is we are learning a lot, and I'm sure the new normal will be even make us even better to address future challenges.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to go to Paul next, and a question, Paul, from Gary Shields. And it's a good question. And he's picked up on the conversations we've had in previous webinars. And he's been talking about the worst case scenarios and the pandemics. And he's wondering about how security can prepare for that role when it doesn't have a seat at the high table, when it isn't generally speaking to the executives. And therefore, of course, it's marginalized from the key decision-making circles, and as a consequence, limits its ability to influence both in the short and long term. Paul, true?
Absolutely, Martin. That's a very good question indeed. And you know what? I think the only way of dealing with the problem is for us to reverse engineer it. The responsibility is from the stakeholder, from the client themselves, to stipulate the conditions they want. Now, unfortunately, we always go out, we outsource our security requirements to the lowest bidder under normal circumstance because we want to make fiscal sense. But the reality is that you get what you pay for. Now, there are very, very few environments, healthcare is one of them, where there is a general desire to go in and improve the situation. I'm sure Bonnie will support that. But in most cases, we're asking for someone just to look after a door or to maintain a property while we don't want to be there. And so that's the responsibility ending. Now we have to work beyond that. I've seen guards show up with no PPE. They've had to take transit. They've had to make their way to work to somewhere that someone doesn't want to be for fear of infection. And now we're expecting someone on minimum wage to now look after our asset while we are absent. That's not acceptable. We have to work forward. We have to prepare. We have to give them the tools they need. And if the companies are not in a place to supply that, we need to step in as stakeholders and clients to make sure that these people have the same protection we would give our employees.
Thank you. I'm going to come to Bonnie next, and I'll come to Sean on this same issue. Bonnie, your thoughts about this question of the seat at the high table and the ability to influence as a result much reduced by and large. Bonnie.
I've seen a major transformation over the past several decades in this field about people now getting into the executive suite because they've worked hard to do that. And it's not easy and it's not always possible, but I think we have an opportunity during disasters more than usual to showcase what we can do for an organization. And I think part of that is over-delivering. It's helping people to understand that we are extremely resourceful. It's helping people to become our champions because we have provided them so many services throughout our organizations that they go to the top executive levels and say, this is what security or risk have done for us. It is helping the C-suite and our senior leaders to understand what our environments would look like if our departments, if our operations did not exist, what that would look like in terms of mass chaos and what would be diminished. And it is helping people, and I agree with everything Paul said, to get aware that by hiring the lowest level people, perhaps at the lowest salaries, that they are simply wasting money rather than showing security as a profit enhancing function, which many of you know I speak about that a lot, and we should all be doing that.
Thank you very much indeed, Bonnie. I'm going to ask Sean some questions. Sean, it's a variation on the theme is this influence at the highest level.
Yeah.
And Bonnie's just mentioned there about explaining the benefits. On previous webinars, we've had people argue along similar lines, but that many security professionals are not equipped to speak at the highest level. They can't speak the language of business, and as a consequence are marginalized as a result. Of course, you've come slightly from a different angle on this. I wonder what your impression is so far.
I think the points that were made by Paul and Bonnie, in fact, everyone has been amazing and absolutely spot on. And I'm here nodding in vigorous agreement. And I think a couple of points. I think the point that Bonnie made about showing the value that we can add is enormously important. I think about making that sticky. Let's not forget people have a short memory. You know, in 6 months' time, will they remember what everybody did and how everybody stepped up? So we need to make it sticky and make sure it wasn't just a passing phase, and make sure people remember. I also think if I talk to you about my personal experience, and again, similarities with safety in the security piece, I was fairly successful getting my point across to senior people in the safety world. But once I made a concerted effort to get out there and understand more about what was important to the HR director, what was important to the finance director, what was important to the operations director, and I chose to do that through an MBA. And I know it's not everybody's cup of tea to do later life study, but there are other ways of doing it. But it did unlock so many different conversations. And the thing that jumped to mind for me was, you know, Stephen Covey's seven habits of highly effective people, one of them being, you know, seek first to understand, to be understood. So don't go steaming in with your agenda. Find out what it is that is of interest to them. Why should the HR director be interested with what you've got to say? Why should the operations director? So think about, you know, how you can get them to buy into what you want, how you can collaborate with them, and then, but also think about, you know, what you can bring and understand what's important to them, and show them that you are, you know, that as a profession, we add so much value right across our portfolio.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to come to Mohammed next, and a question from Charles Olu. Charles, who's actually on a future webinar, has asked about, some of you have mentioned the fact that business is changing, people are working from home. Isn't this an incredibly good opportunity for offenders? People are less protected there, and big dangers. Would you agree, Mohammed?
Well, I don't say really a time for offenders. They are benefits and issues going along with it. Now, for those who had to commute long distances, it's very good now that they're working from home and therefore working more hours because they have the whole day to be able to deliver. The issue of being vulnerable by working at home, yes, that could be a problem. But I want to mention also that it's where now security companies are picking up even much more to ensure that residentials are given better security. And that is happening very well now. And somebody mentioned about the issue of low-paying jobs. You can't afford to pay security companies low now. You pay low, you suffer. And therefore, we are seeing an impact in this area that you must keep the best, have the best to ensure that across board, they provide the best security, both at home and in business, which are actually closed, or people working from home.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got a question here from, I'm going to come to each of you on this actually, just ask for a brief question from Jappreet Joshi. And his question is, I'll come to Paul first. His question is, if this happens again, and we're talking about a second wave here, is security going to be prepared? And I think part of the context is, one of you's already mentioned it actually, the issue of fatigue. Paul, is security going to be prepared if it happens again? On a previous webinar, there was an argument about, on the one hand, of course, it's got all the experience, and on the other, people are getting very tired now. Paul, very, very briefly, if you wouldn't mind, we're running out of time, your thoughts.
Martin, I hope they will be better prepared. I'm not sure that they will be prepared unless that interaction that we've been talking about is fully delivered. I think it's inevitable that there will be more of these incidents, whether it's another COVID-style pandemic or something else. And the importance is for the private sector, the public sector, to work in harmony through security excellence. And Bonnie mentioned that, the need for an excellence in the profession to make sure that we work together to improve it. Fatigue, yeah, we're dealing with the same people. They're going to be fatigued, and they're also going to be a little bit jaundiced towards things going around the second time. So we have to give them the proper incentive and the proper support.
Bonnie, I'm going to come to you with this question. It's not a given, is it, that people are going to be able to respond better the second time round?
No,
how confident are you?
I think it's not a given. I think it will vary. You know, there's great security leaders, there's great presidents of companies, and there's people that aren't great. I think having support at the top is very important. I think having fundamentals and a good foundation for a very well competent, trained, cared for team will be the key. And I think finding resourceful ways to help people allay their fears, help people get some of the things they need, whether it's simply time off, etc., are extremely important in getting people to the next level. But I think it's going to be a challenge. What I think is the most important, though, is for us to take lessons learned now and make sure we're writing everything that happens down, including decisions we make, bad decisions, good decisions, options we've had to choose from, going through those at the end of this with our entire teams, figuring out what worked, what didn't work, what we want to change permanently going forward, so that at least those things will be in place if there's a second wave.
Thank you very much indeed. Quick question for Sean, and I'm going to have to be very quick if you wouldn't mind, Sean, from John Legg. Yep. And he's asking a question about, and it overlaps the health and safety issue actually. Is it the time for all entrances to buildings, shops, restaurants, events to be staffed by security, to be issued with thermometers to check people? Currently, the issuing of security cards for entrance will not prevent those entering with a virus to get in. Is the world ready for that, Sean?
I think there will be individual risk assessments carried out, individual units. I personally am not a fan of the universal thermometer check because I think I think the better model is individual thermometer checks at home. So why would, for example, if I was ill, I'd have to drive to the train station, get a train into London, get the tube across town, get out of Blackfriars. I've been an hour and a half on public transport to get to a door for a security guard to put a thermometer at my head and tell me I've got a temperature to send me home. The better thing, the self-efficacy model of owning your own health and well-being and personal temperature checks before going into work is a much better model in my view.
Okay. There are so many questions. We're not going to have time to go to them all. I'm going to now ask each of the panelists just to give us their final comment. I'll come to Sean first. Sean, just your final comment, please. And if I could just ask you to be 20 seconds, if you wouldn't mind, about responding to this crisis.
Try and get out of the idea of waves. Don't think of it in first wave, second wave, third wave. Think of it as a way of living going forwards. Because if we think about it as a way of living going forwards, we will be better prepared for any pandemic, whatever shape or size it should come in. So factor it into your norm rather than it being a project.
Thank you very much indeed. And Bonnie, how equipped are we going to be going forward? Just 20 seconds if you wouldn't mind, please.
I think we have all seen very horrific and sad things, but hopefully we've all seen innovation and commitment and inspirational leadership and competence. Those things have to be maximized. And finally, I think personally, what I found is resilience isn't about being happy about what's going on. It's more about taking what is and impacting it and impacting the people you have ability to do so with as best you can during a very hard time.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Paul, again, if you wouldn't mind, just 20 seconds, your final thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think we've made great strides. There's a very, very, very important lesson to be learnt from everyone's comments today. We need to work collaboratively. We need to move harmoniously. And you know what? The key is we need to be nice to people.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. And finally, Mohammed, your final comments, just 20 seconds if you wouldn't mind, please.
Well, we have learned a lot from this, and depending on where you are on your business continuity plan, whether response, recovery, construction, please find your spot and work on from there and make sure you are fitting in and getting things back to normal.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, my grateful thanks to my panel for your insightful comments. The good thing is, and this is always the sign, I think, of a successful webinar, is we weren't able to get through all the questions. But my grateful thanks to all of you for that. Just to remind you that the OSPAs are open around the world. Now, when you're thinking about security doing well, it is fundamental that we recognise, identify those who are exceptional at what they do. That's what the Outstanding Security Performance Awards are about, and entries are currently open in India, the United States, Benelux, Kenya, Romania, Australia and the UK. And on these webinars, we have what I consider to be an elite audience. These are people around the world thinking about thought leadership. And I would ask each of you, if you would, to just nominate one person or one team or one initiative or one company that you think's outstanding for the Oscars. And to say we go through all again every Tuesday and Thursday. And next Tuesday, we're thinking about security education and training post-COVID-19. What changes do we want and what can we expect? And this issue's cropped up quite a bit over the last few weeks. And so we've got an international panel, both training experts and educators and academics, to debate where we go with that topic. So please do join us 3:30 on Tuesday. Just to say, if you'd like to be part of the panel, if you'd like to engage with us as a company, please don't hesitate to contact us. And a final reminder that we have to recognise that the quality of what we get in the future depends on conversations like today. We're greatly honoured to have had our panel here. They've done a great job. Thank you for your insights. Finally, wherever you are in the world, stay safe.